Welcome, everybody, to a special edition of All In with Art Stapleton, a New York Giants podcast brought to you by NorthJersey.com and The Record. I'm your host, Art Stapleton. We are on location down here in West Palm Beach, Florida. And as you can see behind me, it is not the Breakers Hotel, which is where the NFL annual meeting is being held. No, we are in an undisclosed location. This is the Media Hotel, or one of several Media Hotels, where the rates are a little bit more in our ballpark rather than the $1,000 a night rooms over at the Breakers, which is where the league has its annual meeting, affectionately known as the owners' meetings down here in Florida. Today was very humid outside, typical South Florida. Just got caught in a thunderstorm heading back here to our hotel, but we are back with you live on recording here to wrap up the technically first day of availability here at the owners' meetings, even though yesterday is also a day where people are down here. But we had the AFC coaches breakfast this morning. Then the beat met with Joe Schoen in a conference room that was away from podium, kind of sat in there, nice air conditioning and at a nice table. And for 85% of the media session, it was about the quarterback with the Giants and where they go from here. Then setting the table for tomorrow morning, 7:45 a.m., it's the NFC Coaches Breakfast. Brian Daboll, live and in color, will be available. And we will have 2 months of questions for Brian Daboll and probably get about 30 minutes of non-answers from the coach of the New York Giants. He has not spoken publicly since the day after the 2024 season ended, when John Mara made the decision, along with Steve Tisch, to bring Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen back for a fourth year. So where we're at, I was kind of going back and forth with a couple different ideas as to do the show today. And I think we got to talk quarterback, got to talk takeaways and what we got from Joe Schoen. Now, it's kind of funny because, as I've told you many times in NorthJersey.com, in the print editions of The Record, on all my social media accounts, and here on All In, it's lying season. It's lead a reporter down a certain road, lead your opposing general manager or your opposing coach down a certain road that might give a little bit of a mystery to what you want to do in the NFL draft and what you feel about prospects. I think Joe Schoen was, by being forthcoming today, was kind of doing that a little bit. And if you have been following the rest of the beat on social media today and you see some stories that have posted at other outlets, the feeling is Joe Schoen really didn't sound like a man who's prepared to take a quarterback at number 3 in the draft, regardless of what happens. Now, to me, some of that is Joe Schoen being a straight shooter, but also I think Joe Schoen would like you to think that he's not going to take a quarterback, because you just don't know what other teams will do if you're sitting there expecting a certain player to be there at number 3. So is it gamesmanship? Maybe a little bit. But the fact remains, Joe Schoen didn't say anything that we didn't know. You need the value to match for a quarterback. You're not going to reach too far for a quarterback. But the underlying theme here right now is we know the Giants need a franchise quarterback. Now, can they go through the 2025 draft and not get a franchise quarterback? I guess it's certainly possible. The further you go back into the draft, you probably get into no man's land where is it really worth taking a quarterback in the 3rd round? You're better off adding and building your roster and then kind of throwing up the white flag and saying, we're going to do what we got to do. We tried, and let's go into next season looking for a franchise quarterback. Now, do I think that's going to happen? I'd be very surprised if we go through 2 different drafts. Now, last year was deeper at quarterback than this year. Obviously, that the Giants would do all this homework. Sooner or later, you've got to step up to the tee box and hit that ball. And they've got to take a chance. Now, am I telling them to pass on someone like a Travis Hunter, if he's sitting there with Cam Ward going 1 and Abdul Carter going number 2 at the Browns, coming out of today, talking to as many league sources as I can, trying to listen and pay attention to what people are saying, it sounds like right now, and I know my mock draft 5.0 posted on NorthJersey.com on Monday morning, and it was Cam Ward went number 1 to the Titans, and number 2 was Shedeur Sanders to the Browns. So I ended up taking Abdul Carter over Travis Hunter. But the more I'm hearing, the more it sounds like the Browns, what they want out there is the idea, at least behind and back channels, is that they will not take a quarterback, and they will take Abdul Carter at number 2, which would leave the Giants in a very interesting situation with Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders. Now, that's where it gets interesting, because when you listen to Joe Schoen, when he talked about when you draft a franchise quarterback, you draft a quarterback that high, you're drafting a quarterback who you expect to have you in contention for your division title every year, with the potential to make the playoffs every year, someone you can build around for 10 to 15 years, which is a little bit of a stretch. Not every quarterback gets to that point, but we'll roll with it a little bit. And then ultimately, can you see that quarterback develop into someone who can lead you to a Super Bowl? Is Shedeur Sanders that quarterback? Well, I'll remind you, this time last year, very few people expected Michael Penix to go number 8 overall to the Atlanta Falcons. Very few people expected Bo Nix to go in the top 10. And then J.J. McCarthy to Minnesota in the top 10. So Bo Nix was technically top 12, I think. But the fact remains is that there were 6 quarterbacks last year, and 3 of them were expected to be the top 3 picks. But then the other 3, we just didn't know. And I think when you're assessing this draft, if you're just going based off of draft grades and what the consensus is in the league, it's Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter. Those are the players probably with the smallest margin forever when you're drafting guys. But we already believe that Cam Ward is going number 1 overall. And just because the Titans believe that Cam Ward is the number 1 overall pick doesn't make him the number 1 player on everybody's board. But is the difference between Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter and Cam Ward that minimal for the Titans to see enough in Cam Ward to take that shot? Because you want to take that swing. That's kind of become the Giants' mantra, right? Take that swing at quarterback. They took that swing for Matthew Stafford. They took that swing for Aaron Rodgers. Now they're swinging at not 1 but 2 veteran quarterbacks in this QB room. The Titans are going to make the decision to go Cam Ward, number 1. I know the feeling consensus-wise is that Cam Ward is that much better than Shedeur Sanders or any other quarterback in this draft. But it doesn't matter what everybody else thinks. It matters what the Giants think. And I think they're still developing their opinion. You know, I've heard that the Giants have really worked their back channels in order to be able to try to get a feel for Shedeur Sanders. And we've seen them publicly at Colorado practice and in the lobby at the East-West Shrine Bowl talking to Shedeur Sanders. But to me, it's gone beyond that. My sources tell me that there are players at Colorado that the Giants, in their meetings with them throughout the All-Star circuit, have talked about Shedeur Sanders, have wanted to get a feel for Shedeur Sanders and where he sits. It's not just about the prospect that you're with. Sometimes it's the prospect that you know. And I think the Giants met with Will Shepard, and who's the receiver in Colorado. And there's a feeling that, you know, maybe I had Will Shepard going to the Giants in the 7th round in my first mock draft. It's because I kind of heard that the Giants had met with him and liked him a little bit. Well, they may have liked him a lot more because they wanted to hear what he had to say about Shedeur Sanders. So they're trying to form an opinion. It's clear they're trying to form an opinion on Shedeur Sanders. My gut tells me that it will be a decision between Shedeur and Travis Hunter. So now you go from the best corner in the draft is Travis Hunter. You have a player who some teams believe is the best wide receiver in the draft. And I believe the Giants think they can spot him offensively, but they will not all of a sudden put him in the starting lineup to play wide receiver. Versus Shedeur and a possible shot at a franchise quarterback. I don't know how many boards, if any, if they're just stacking grades and talent, I don't know if any board in the league will have Shedeur Sanders above Travis Hunter. But again, if you have that conviction in a player, especially a quarterback, how much is that bump? How much, if a guy is graded at 8.0 and the quarterback is graded at 7.2, is there enough of a bump position-wise to say you take the 7.2 quarterback because you believe he can develop into a franchise quarterback? It's going to be a question that everyone asks, and it's going to be a question that John Mara and Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll and everyone else in the front office are going to throw around the next couple of weeks. And I know some of you right away hear me mention John Mara and say, well, Mara's going to get involved. Just let the guys pick. The owner is involved. He's the team president also. He's going to be involved. But if last year is any indication, he's not going to get in the way of Joe Schoen making decisions. He's just not. Because if he did, guess what? Saquon Barkley would still be a Giant. And if Joe Schoen wanted to keep his job, he would have just signed Saquon Barkley last year. But it's not about job preservation. It's about being able to make the right call for the Giants. Now, you could make the argument that taking Travis Hunter is a better long-term decision for the New York Giants. You could. If you think he is an elite cornerback, you take Travis Hunter. Travis Hunter is right now the most exciting player in the draft, without question. His crowd at the Combine was up to 100 reporters. You can sell, if he's wearing 12, you can sell that jersey everywhere. Giants fans will eat Travis Hunter up. He's a Heisman Trophy winner. He's an exciting player. You put him outside with Paulson Adebo, then you have Tay Banks, and you say strengthen your secondary. Then you've got Drew Phillips in the slot, and then you have two safeties like Tyler Nubin and Javon Holland. You got something cooking on the back end. I mean, his defense can be really good. Then you take Hunter and you put him in there offensively for 10 to 15 plays, opposite Malik Neighbors, with Darius Slayton and Jalen Hyatt and Wan'Dale Robinson and Theo Johnson, maybe a tight end in the draft. Maybe you draft a running back to pair with Tyrone Tracy. Makes a lot of sense. But again, quarterback rules all. And Joe Schoen made that pretty clear today in that he was not going to go against his board. But by the same token, Colorado's Pro Day is on Friday. The Giants will return from the owners' meetings late tomorrow night. Wednesday morning, 7 a.m., they'll be in their draft room. They'll start having their post-combine, pro day. These are the draft meetings that set the board. So it starts on Wednesday morning, and the Giants will get together and start putting their draft board together. Then they'll send a contingent out to Colorado, and then between then, they'll have workouts and 30 visits for players. And then 3 weeks from now, all of a sudden, they will be ready for the draft. So, again, you're going to hear coming out of here that the Giants are set themselves up. They can go in any direction that they want at number 3, and it's all true. But it's not changing my opinion. If they like Shedeur Sanders, they will take Shedeur Sanders at number 3. Now, is it a big pill to swallow all of a sudden? If you take Shedeur Sanders and then a month into the season, Travis Hunter is doing things that this league has not seen in decades. That's something you got to live with. Because let's not forget, you have to have a pretty stiff upper lip here. You're going to take Shedeur Sanders if you take him at number 3. And you're probably going to start the season with Russell Wilson at quarterback. And will you be able to withstand the perception league-wide that you passed on Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders is basically just in practice? It's something to consider. And again, if you're making the long-term decision, if you're the Giants, you make the right call for your franchise. You don't care what the outside thinks. But let's not forget, Minnesota last year had the quarterback that they took and they traded up for, and J.J. McCarthy, hurt his knee, undergo knee surgery, not take a snap in the regular season. It just so happened that Sam Darnold, the franchise quarterback, the free agent quarterback that they signed on a minimum deal last year, a relatively minimum deal that they brought in. I don't mean league minimum. I mean, they didn't overpay Sam Darnold. They certainly didn't pay Sam Darnold in Minnesota what the Rams are paying Sam Darnold right now. But you're talking about perspective, and not for anything, Giants fans. And look, it's not your fault. It's your franchise's fault. Perspective has been lost the last decade and a half around here. So you want immediate gratification too, and you deserve that in a sense. So it's going to be very interesting. Again, we'll put that on hold. We'll be back tomorrow after Brian Dable talks. We'll do another show tomorrow. Thanks to producer Paul Wood for making time in his schedule, being flexible enough. So hats off to Paul. But Joe Schoen says this spring, QB competition will open with Russell Wilson getting first-team reps. Jameis Winston, who we got to talk to, he is now officially signed by the Giants. It's very interesting because I heard from a lot of people the different paths that they were traveling on for these quarterbacks. What was it like for Jameis Winston and Russell Wilson to feel like you weren't first choice or second choice? What we learned today, after the Matthew Stafford thing, he was clearly plan A, and the Giants took their shot. They met with Aaron Rodgers. Yes, they were willing. If Aaron Rodgers woke up on a day and said, I want to be a Giant, they would have signed Aaron Rodgers. But when Russell Wilson visited here, Joe Schoen told us this was 11 days ago, I guess, or longer than that, 11 days from when Jameis Winston signed. He visited on a Friday. I think it was the 13th, if I'm not mistaken. When when Russell Wilson visited the Giants, and Jameis Winston had not visited yet, Giants made Russell Wilson an offer, according to Joe Schoen. And then they spent the next week and a half essentially negotiating that contract. In the meantime, when Jameis Winston came and visited the Giants, Jameis Winston told us today on a video call he knew the Giants had an offer out to Russell Wilson. Now, the perspective for us, we didn't have all the details. I had some. I had told you they wanted to sign 2 veteran quarterbacks. The pitch they made to Jameis was, yes, come in and compete, but we've already made an offer to Russell Wilson, and we could bring Russell in as well. And Jameis said he was fine with that, and he signed his contract. He signed a 2-year deal. So what the Giants did is essentially lock up their bridge quarterback and their backup for this year and next year, paving the way to have an opportunity to draft a rookie quarterback and not force him into the lineup. They paid Russell Wilson $10.5 million guaranteed. It's $10 million guaranteed with the signing bonus, and then $500,000, I believe it's for a workout bonus, to be there once the OTAs start, the offseason program start on April 24th, which is actually the week of the draft. So he has to be there to collect that bonus. That bumps it up to $10.5 million guaranteed. If the Giants get off to a rough start, or if the rookie quarterback that they draft, if they draft one at 3 or at the top of the second round, like I had in my mock draft, taking Jalen Milroe, well, then Russell Wilson will go to the bench if he's outplayed. And it'll be a similar situation to the way Kurt Warner went to the bench. But Jameis is here for 2 years now on contract, very similar to what they did with Tyrod Taylor. Remember, Tyrod Taylor was signed to a 2-year deal. So he was here for Daboll's first season and Daboll's second season. And they didn't know what they were going to do with Daniel Jones. But Jameis will be here for 2 years. Jameis is going to get paid $4 million this year, and if the current regime is moving in the right direction, Jameis will be here next year. Russell Wilson's only on a 1-year contract. So, yes, Russell Wilson will start the offseason program as the starting quarterback. But beyond that, we'll get a lot more clarity once the draft comes and see who's there and who plays. And if anybody knows what it's like to be a rookie coming in and to force a team's hand in order to play the rookie instead of the free agent that was signed for $10 million, as I've told you, it was Russell Wilson, who was the third-round rookie in Seattle, who beat out Matt Flynn and forced Seattle to play Russell Wilson over Matt Flynn. Matt Flynn, very similar, essentially the same guarantee, $10 million, that Russell Wilson got this year with the Giants. Let's see, a couple other things from Joe Schoen, and then we'll turn it over for tomorrow and be back tomorrow. Get Paul out to his coaching assignment tonight, and we'll roll back again down here in West Palm Beach tomorrow. Couple things. One, talking to the AFC coaches. Check out my column that I wrote about the Giants quarterbacks as I see our chat, and Paul tells me, go Lady Mustangs. So go Lady Mustangs, Clifton's finest, getting them started early. When I covered high school sports, Clifton softball was one of the premier programs in the state of New Jersey. I haven't checked up on them lately, but I know what the youth program's doing, and with the guys like Paul Wood involved, it's definitely top notch. I mean, you're talking about the Philadelphia Eagles and the Kansas City Chiefs of girls softball. So how you like that, Paul? So anyway, my column today that I posted on NorthJersey.com, probably be in the Record tomorrow. Check it out, because I got, just in terms of personality of this quarterback room with Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston, you couldn't ask for two complete opposites from a personality perspective. So what did we do? You make your most time during the AFC Coaches Breakfast. I went to Sean Payton. Check out that video on NorthJersey.com. Asked him about two quarterbacks that he's coached, Russell Wilson in Denver, Jameis Winston in New Orleans. Talked to Pete Carroll about Russell Wilson. Also got a little bit from Mike Tomlin about Russell Wilson. Wasn't anything great, just called him a class act, so kind of left it out of the column. But the column, to me, the best quote in the column was from a league source who told me, when I asked, what do you think of the personalities of the Giants quarterback room? And he said it basically going from milk toast to Fireball whiskey. And that was the quote that I used. And that's kind of the personalities in that room. You got Russ, who is corny, comes off as a little bit of a phony, but I think it's genuine. But you kind of have to question, is it all genuine? Or he knows the playbook to kind of win over the crowd. A little bit of a politician, similar to kind of Wink Martindale, that personality. I'm not saying things like that are going to happen that happened with Wink behind the scenes here. But, Wink knew, talk up the crowd, talk about the defense, talk about the fans. Russell has that playbook down pat. You've been in the league 14 years, you know how to run it. Meanwhile, Jameis Winston, he comes off as genuine and, he's funny. He talked about bringing the giggles back to the Giants today. Now, he said about he and Russell, they have a very good relationship. They had a mutual friend who's no longer with us, that they kind of bonded over, gave kind of a mental coach, I think he said. So I'm going to dig more on that when we have an opportunity to kind of see both of those guys this spring. But, what Sean Payton told me, and as I wrote in the column, he kind of smirked. And I'm telling you, go watch the video. You read how I described it in the column, and then go watch the video on NorthJersey.com. It's about a minute. It's not too long. And just see how Sean Payton described those two guys and basically said, shoot, it's going to be interesting. And I think the Giants wanted a complete makeover of their quarterback room. Now, they didn't have a choice. Drew Lock was a free agent. They released Daniel Jones at his request, and Tommy DeVito was an exclusive rights free agent. So they bring Tommy back, and let's be honest, Tommy has had the most personality in that room the last 2 years. I mean, you have an undrafted rookie. It gets to a point, I think even Tommy was tired of his personality. Tommy wanted to be about football. He didn't want to be about this and, everything that came with his story the last 2 years, or really the first year. Last year, it was unfortunate for him getting hurt in that first game with the forearm, and everything really kind of spun out after that. And then Drew Lock took over and played all but one of the rest of the games. But there's some personality here. Now, was this the plan that the Giants talked about in the offseason? I don't know necessarily if they named players when they met with John Mara and when Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen and his front office met. But this is what they have right now. And is it better than the quarterback collection they've had each of the last 2 years? Probably. It probably is. It's probably better. But does it mean the Giants are ready to contend in this division? They're going to need a lot to go right in order to be able to contend in this division. So, again, a lot of quarterback talk today. So you would expect that with Joe Schoen. A couple quick hits. I'm trying to think of things from still no word on Evan Neal. Joe Schoen said, Evan Neal, it's been communicated to them that Evan Neal will do whatever is necessary for the team versus, playing tackle or guard. They'll see what they get in the draft and then see where Evan Neal slots. Look, the bottom line is they got to see how healthy Evan Neal is throughout the offseason and then where he's moving. So does he play at guard? Does he play at center, at tackle? Center. That would be interesting. But I think it's a leap of faith for the offensive line that Joe Schoen is taking. I'm not sure it's not a risk. I think it is a risk. They count a lot on John Michael Schmitz, and he's had an up and down career to start here for 2 years, been banged up. Can he stay healthy, and can he take that next step at center? And you saw little signs, but you didn't see enough. You need Andrew Thomas healthy, obviously. You need John Runyon healthy. I think they have some depth behind the guys. You're going to need more. You need more in the draft. It wouldn't surprise me to see them go after a starting guard or at least somebody who can take over at guard if they play and perform well early on in the season. And, I think in the draft, here's what I think. I think you're going to end up with a quarterback. You're going to end up with a defensive tackle, most likely a 3 technique or a 5 technique to play next to Dexter Lawrence. I think you're going to end up with an interior offensive lineman, maybe a tackle, probably not, but it depends on where the value falls. I think you're going to end up with a running back. Those are the positions I would expect the Giants to be in the hunt for in the draft. And then however else the board falls, it'll be interesting. Running back is deep in the draft. Defensive tackle, very deep in the draft. And for what you've done in free agency, you've kind of plugged some holes. It'll be interesting to see how that works out. So that's where we're at. So technically day 1 for us here at owners meetings with all the official public availability. Kind of worked behind the scenes yesterday, trying to get as much information as I can to deliver to you guys regarding the Giants and the draft. But again, check in tomorrow after Brian Daboll. We'll try to pick the right time a lot earlier than now to get that all-in episode up. But that's where we're at. So day 1 in the books in West Palm Beach. Hope you enjoy all the coverage. Got stories on NorthJersey.com. Check out the video. And, of course, I hope you enjoyed this episode of All In. Because we are all in, just like we know you are all in. For Paul Wood, I'm Art Stapleton. Go Lady Mustangs. And we will be back tomorrow from down here in Palm Beach.